use those big zucchinis that you can't use for a whole lot else.
Yeah, there's a lot of things you can do with the dried stuff. It's just having the equipment and the time to do, and the space to do the drying of the produce. We have a lot of problems. Remember, if your freezer, your stuff's not going to last as long in your freezer as you do with Grandma's, because remember Grandma's freezer had all that ice build up around the side? We had frost, and Grandma didn't have a frost-free freezer, and so you had to defrost the refrigerator, but now we have frost-free freezers, and we don't have to defrost them. But what it does is it takes the moisture out of the air. If it takes the moisture out of the air, it takes the moisture out of your fruits and vegetables in the freezer too. So things don't freeze as well as they used to unless you have the old kind of freezer that builds up ice. And if it builds up ice, it's going to be better for freezing food. The other thing is the chest freezers are better because it holds it colder. A lot of us put the stuff over our top of our refrigerator, and that doesn't get as cold and as hard as a freezer will. So if you're going to throw it over the top of the refrigerator, it's not going to last as long as it's going to last in the chest freezer.
Do you recommend vacuum sealing for everything, herbs, everything?
I just do the water kind of vacuum seal at home. If you're going to use it fast, you don't have to worry about the vacuum seal. The vacuum seal is something you want to hold longer. But I use it because it gets the air, and I can put more in my freezer.
For everything?
Yeah.
So how long in the freezer? 3 months, 6 months, 9 months?
6 to 9 months is a good rule of thumb. No more than you can eat in a year. If you call me in a year and say I have some squash that I put in the bottom of the freezer with the turkey from last Thanksgiving, is it going to make me sick? I'm going to say, no, it's not going to make you sick, but it's probably not going to taste very good.
What about if you're doing something like making pesto and putting it in bags to freeze? Is that in little Ziplocs and things? And then
You can do that. If you follow your recipes, do the same way. Vacuum seal your bags. If I were going to do pestos, what I would do is invest in some of the little plastic freezer containers, or some of these kinds of things where you could put them in where they would seal better. Because you know the liquid stuff, or use your reused, can't say butter containers, but reuse those plastic containers that have some of that other stuff in them, and put your freezer bag in there, and then put your bag in the other container, so you have some kind of shape to it. Because you know if you just put the pesto in the freezer, it's hard to keep that shape of things.
What about Pyrex?
I would use a bag in Pyrex, and I would take it out of the bag. Pyrex is okay in the freezer, except you do have the risk of cracking or breaking if you get it out. I mean, it's not supposed to, but you're really better off with just plastic things in your freezer.
You had containers that had frozen items in it before. Do you think those would be okay, or is that still?
I would reuse them with a freezer bag. Like some of the ice cream tubs and those kinds of things.
Right.
Just put a freezer bag in it. And I looked. Truly the best bags are the cheap bags. You know, the cheap freezer bags that come in I couldn't find them at the store this morning or yesterday when I looked. But those are truly the best bags to use for the freezer. And when you do that, what you do is you do a double fold over. So you put your bag, put your food in the bag, you seal it, you twist it, and then you turn it over and you seal it like that again. So you make like a little loop on the top. You don't just seal it like that because the air gets in. So you do it, twist it, turn it over, twist it again, and then you put your little twist tie around it there. And that's truly the best bag to use. They seal better than these because these are liable to come over in the freezer. Have y'all ever had these and you think they're sealed, but they're not as sealed as the others.
Can you re-demonstrate?
Yes, I was going to look and see if I had a regular bag. I have a regular bag. Okay, so if you have a regular bag, you bring it together and you twist it, and then you turn it over again and twist it, and then you use a little twist tie to do that. Oh, the vacuum was the vacuum seal. Okay, let's put a little more water in it. I used to use my keys, and in one of the sessions the guy said, "Is that got one of those electronic things on?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I wouldn't put my key in water." So you're probably right. So you're not gonna okay, so just stick your little finger or a straw. If I'm doing cream corn or something, then I just put a straw in here. You just want to have a little bit of it open. I just put my finger just so that I know it's open. You put it all down in water, except where your finger is. Just push it around. Take your finger out and close it, and it vacuum seals. And then you can put it in the freezer. See, look how pretty our green beans look compared to what we started with. Here's your starter.
Is there anything in particular you would say absolutely don't freeze this, can this, or vice versa?
It's up to you. The way you put it up depends on how you want to use it getting it out. So that's why I go ahead and cook my cauliflower before I put it up, because when I get it out, I'm going to cook it and put some cheese or casserole it or something. I'm not going to. So figure out what you want to do, and sometimes cooking it ahead of time is just as good, and then freezing it as blanching and freezing it for me. So figure out how you want to use it. It's your end method you need to think about. And you may put things up several ways. You may have some that you freeze, you may have some that you can, depending on how you want to use them. Canned green beans are really good. Frozen green beans are good if you're going to cook them for longer periods of time. They're supposed to have a fresher taste to them. They have more of a bite. Canned green beans are going to be a softer green bean. So there's no use in me freezing a lot of green beans at my house because nobody likes it. They like them canned. They like the texture of them canned better. So it just depends on what your family likes in the end use. Tomatoes taste better to me if you do the canning, the freezing. But if you're going to make tomato sauce out of them, when you pull them out of the freezer, it doesn't really matter. So think about your end use of the product, and don't put up more than you're going to eat. Because putting up more than you're going to eat doesn't help any of you. Just waste freezer space, waste jar space. Get a neighbor.
Is there any difference in nutritional content when you take them out?
Your fresh, okay, we have this debate. People say canned stuff doesn't have the nutrition. Well, the important thing is to eat the veggies. Number one, eat the veggie. Doesn't matter how you eat it. Frozen is going to have a little bit better nutritional value because you haven't cooked it. Vitamin C dies with heat. So the longer you process things, the less vitamin C you have in food. So the freezer is going to have a little bit better nutritional value, but not a whole lot.
But one of the things with that, think about it, if you're growing your own vegetables, you're going to go pick them, you got a load of vegetables, only so much you can eat, but you know they're growing. You're going to get some more of the fresh, and you're going to can them right away. If you go off to the store and buy stuff, maybe a farmer's market would be different, but if you're buying it from somewhere else, it's already been out, and they've lost nutrition just from sitting out there. So again, fresh frozen, and I call it fresh because you've just picked it and frozen it or canned it, has more nutrition than what's fresh, so to speak, not cooked, but it's been out there a while.
So really, you should pick and freeze in the same day, pick and can in the same day. And remember, it's not going to be any better after you can it than it was before you started, because some people say, well, I'll go ahead and get, well, if it wasn't very good when you started, it's not going to be very good at the end, because you are going to lose a little bit of quality as you go through the process, just because of the way you have to heat process things, you're going to lose a little bit of quality.
There was an article in the paper last week, just so people know, since everybody's growing stuff, that the food banks can now take fresh stuff if you have extra and you don't feel like canning it. There's several places in town that will take your extra vegetables and give them to the food banks. So that's good to know. If you're not going to use everything,
call
give it to
211. 211 can help you find a place to use them.
Yeah.
There's some of the senior centers, there's some of the youth centers that will take the produce. So, and we're even encouraging people, grow a row for the hungry if you have extra produce to turn in.
Is there, like, the recycling thing that numbers 1 through 5, I assume, one of those, the bags, in other words, if I have a container or a yogurt container that's a number 1 or 2?
If the container was not meant to be used in the freezer, we don't put it in the freezer. That's the basic rule. So yogurt in the shelf is not meant to be used in the freezer. It's in the refrigerator, so you wouldn't want to put it in the freezer. Your butter containers or margarine containers aren't frozen, so you wouldn't want to put them in the freezer. If you get something, we have to be careful about reusing, because when you take a plastic, I don't want to say that name, but it has white fluffy stuff. When you take those kinds of containers and put them in a dishwasher, the heat messes up the chemical composition. So then you don't want to use that again to refreeze or store food in. So the rule of thumb is we don't reuse containers that are not meant to reuse for food safety purposes. It doesn't mean you can't do other things with it. It doesn't mean you can't store leftovers in the refrigerator with it. But if you're going to spend the time and money to freeze, you want to make sure that you use, or if you're going to use it, use a barrier between it. Use some of those bags that are more inexpensive and put that in the middle and use that to give your shape. Does that help?